I packed my life into 2 suitcases because my own daughter told me to find somewhere else to die. 3 days later, I sat in a stranger's motel room with thin towels and thinner hope, wondering if grief had made me stupid or if love had made me blind. The house I scrubbed and polished for 43 years was suddenly our house, and our house now meant hers. The cash she pressed into my palm like a tip, $200, felt less like help and more like an invoice for maternity. If this is you, if you've ever been told you're useless by people you raised, lean in. I thought my story ended at a budget motel. I was wrong. It started there. My name is Margaret Sullivan, widow, 67, for decades the reliable spine of a family that preferred to pretend it was standing upright on its own. My husband, Robert, died of a heart attack at 71 and left behind orderly files, polished shoes, and a daughter he had always treated like a princess whose need for a crown was everyone else's problem. Victoria, lovely and quick with the right smile. Married an investment banker named Kevin and learned fluency in the language of other people's money. I learned, in turn, how to wash grief-damp pillowcases at dawn and make conversation after funeral casseroles at dusk. The house on Oakwood was my geography of memory burn marks on a baking sheet from a 9th birthday cake. A dent in the banister where Robert once bumped a moving trunk. Window mullions I repainted every spring. When Victoria started talking about efficiency and downsizing, she did not mean her purchases, she meant my presence. The day she arrived with 2 large suitcases and a practiced expression was the day a door I had never locked was slammed on me. According to Dad's will, I inherited everything, she said evenly, eyes on her watch as if civility were a billable hour. The house, the accounts. She had even rehearsed fake kindness. You can stay for a bit, until you find your own place. Then she handed me brochures for a senior complex on Maple Street and told me it would be affordable. The same week she moved her dresses into my closet. Kevin stood in the doorway, like a porter who disliked luggage. He loaded my things into their car with the efficiency of disposal. The Sunset Inn charged $49 a night. The carpet smelled like old rain. I put my 2 suitcases against the wall and sat on the bed that sagged like a tired promise. I stared at the cash, $200, as if shame had a denomination. Then a memory nudged me upright Robert at the kitchen table, spreading documents with the meticulous care he used for everything that mattered, showing me his will years ago and walking me through each clause until I could say them back. I might have been the wife who made lists and soups and holidays, but I wasn't illiterate in the language of protection. Whatever he was, Robert was not cruel. The next morning, I rode a city bus for 20 minutes because dignity is not a car. It is a decision. Harrison Fitzgerald, Robert's attorney, looked up with surprise and concern. Margaret, I've been trying to reach you. Victoria said you were traveling. There had been a reading of the will, he explained. I had not been invited. He opened a thick folder, slipped on his glasses, and read in a voice that sounded like a locked door opening. Our primary residence at 847 Oakwood Drive, including all furnishings and personal effects. To my wife, Margaret. 70% of all financial assets, investments, and accounts approximately $23 million to my wife, Margaret. For our daughter, Victoria, a trust of $10 million, distributions to begin on her 45th birthday, contingent upon her treatment of her mother following my death. The room tilted, and then it steadied. Robert had watched the same things I had eye rolls at dinner. Condescension practiced like a sport, and he had written a life raft into his final instructions. Harrison's kind eyes sharpened. What Victoria did is elder abuse and fraud. Forged documents, likely. Your husband updated his will 6 months before he died. His tone changed from sympathy to purpose. He called his paralegal, then the bank, then the police. The words investigation and injunction entered the air like cold weather. We moved from the conference table to what Harrison jokingly called Command Central. I watched him transform my humiliation into a paper trail that would not go missing. By early afternoon, the banks had frozen every account tied to Robert's estate, and the utilities Victoria had hurried to move into her name were flagged pending verification. We alerted the Registrar of Deeds. A detective named Rodriguez turned the pages of the forged will Victoria had shown me and murmured, "Not a rush job. Someone helped them." The words "someone helped" hovered like a second betrayal. Kevin's calm voice, all those dinner lectures about risk tolerance, flickered through my mind. At 3:47 p.m., my phone lit with Victoria's name. I let it ring once, twice, 3 times, and then answered. "Hello, Victoria," I said, and the quiet between us was a courtroom where every echo mattered. She spoke too fast. "Mom, there's a mix-up with the banks. They're saying assets are frozen like a driver explaining a dent no one could miss." I said Harrison's name. I said will reading. I said dignity clause. She tried the old tricks you don't understand investments. Dad wanted a steady hand. You're being manipulated. Detective Rodriguez, sitting across from me with a legal pad and a patience sharpened by long days, wrote one word on the page and turned it toward me leverage. Operation Justice. Harrison called it cheerfully, because even gentlemen know how to sharpen their humor when wrong is bold. He drafted letters. The detective filed motions. The bank manager put holds on accounts with the calm of a man who had seen storms and knew where to sandbag. I sat beneath the hum of recessed lights and felt something inside me click into alignment, not vengeance. Exactly, but equilibrium. For the first time since the funeral, I was not drowning. I was swimming toward shore. As the sun dropped and the city took on its evening geometry, Harrison leaned back. "They'll feel this in about an hour," he said. Credit cards declined. Calls from bankers, utility suspensions. When my phone buzzed again, I didn't flinch. This time, I was ready to speak in a language my daughter understood: accountability. Victoria's silence on the other end of the phone lasted long enough to confirm the fear in her chest. Then came the scramble, her voice sharp as broken glass. "Mom, you don't know what you're saying. This is grief talking. Someone's filling your head with lies." She was trying to play the role of caretaker, the same role she had staged when she shoved me into a motel room with a $200 tip. I answered with steady calm, the kind of calm that makes liars nervous. "Sweetheart, your father thought of everything. He made sure I'd be safe, even if you turned out to be exactly who he feared you'd become." Her breath hitched. Then she lunged into pleading. "Mom, you can't do this. Think of Kevin. Think of the children. This will ruin us." The detective scribbled manipulation across the page in neat block letters. I thought of Robert's neat hand, the signature I had seen on the updated will, and I chose my words with care. "Victoria, you were left $10 million. All you had to do was treat me with respect. Instead, you forged papers, lied to a lawyer, and told me to find somewhere else to die. That choice cost you everything." By evening, Rodriguez had enough for a warrant. Harrison arranged filings with precision, his voice warm when he reassured me. "Margaret, your daughter isn't untouchable. The law is on your side." For the first time in weeks, I slept in a bed that wasn't sagging with cheap motel springs. I returned home my home, though Victoria had already scattered her perfumes and cosmetics across the master bedroom like a flag planted on conquered soil. I packed her designer clothes into garbage bags and left them on the porch. Let her collect them when she made bail. The arrest came during dinner at a fashionable restaurant. She had been celebrating her inheritance with Kevin when detectives approached the table. Witnesses said she screamed about false arrest, that she demanded a lawyer. But the only lawyer she had was Kevin's golf buddy, who couldn't tell the difference between a civil case and a criminal indictment. Kevin himself was arrested at his office the next morning, handcuffed between a whiteboard of investment strategies and a tray of catered sandwiches. The irony was cinematic. Back in my house, I felt the silence differently. It wasn't loneliness anymore. It was possession. This was mine. Not Robert's, not Victoria's, not anyone else's stage. Harrison called with updates as if delivering weather reports. Victoria's bail set at $50,000, Kevin's at $200,000. All accounts frozen, utilities back in my name. The storm was breaking, but another cloud rolled in. Harrison's investigator uncovered whispers Kevin had been under scrutiny for securities fraud, and Victoria's forged documents bore marks of professional forgery. They had planned this for months. When the news reported their arrests, my phone rang with reporters asking for statements. Channel 7 wanted an interview to make me the face of elder abuse awareness. I wasn't ready, but their interest planted a seed. How many women had been cornered by their own children, tricked into signing papers, pushed toward retirement homes that felt like exile? Maybe telling my story wasn't exploitation. Maybe it was warning. The knock at my door the next morning was not a reporter, but Victoria. She looked hollow, mascara streaks still smudged from the night before. "Mom, please," she whispered. I wanted to laugh at the sudden discovery of humility, but instead, I held the door without opening it wider. "We talked yesterday," I reminded her. "You told me to find somewhere to die. I found somewhere to live instead." She began to cry. Not the elegant tears of manipulation, but broken sobs. "I made mistakes, but I'm still your daughter." I told her about the clause her father had written, about how he had worried 6 months before his death that her entitlement would one day eat us alive. She called me a liar until I pressed play on Robert's recorded video, his voice echoing across the porch. "If you are hearing this, Victoria, it means my fears were justified." He spoke for minutes, recounting sacrifices I had made, condemning the arrogance she had embraced, and leaving no doubt that his decision to alter the will was deliberate. By the time it ended, Victoria sat on the steps shaking. "He hated me," she whispered. I corrected her. "No, he loved you enough to hope you'd prove him wrong. You chose to prove him right." Days later, another visitor arrived, Kevin's mother, Eleanor Hayes, polished as if she had stepped out of an old society photograph. She perched in my living room and spoke with the tone of one granting favors. "Margaret, prosecuting Kevin seems vindictive. We can compensate you $2 million if you drop the charges." When I laughed, her smile froze. $5 million, final offer. I refused again. Her mask cracked, and she leaned forward with menace. "Robert wasn't the man you think he was. We've discovered irregularities in his business dealings. If you pursue this, those details may become public." That night, I combed through Robert's files myself. Shell companies, excessive consulting fees, contracts with firms that barely existed. Carol Chen, the investigator Harrison recommended, confirmed the suspicion with quiet precision. "Margaret, I'm afraid your husband was laundering money. Millions over 12 years. The ground slipped beneath me. The man who had left me flowers on anniversaries had also left me the stench of organized crime. Worse, the $10 million he left Victoria came from those very funds. If the FBI discovered this, everything could be seized. The call came soon after. Victoria again. Mom, we need to talk. Kevin's lawyers have contacted the FBI. If we cooperate, Kevin walks free. You keep the house and $5 million clean dollars, and the rest goes to the government. Your fraud charges disappear. All we have to do is present a united front. She spoke like a businesswoman explaining a merger. I hung up and stared at Robert's desk. My husband's secret life, my daughter's greed, my son-in-law's schemes, all of it pressed against me. But then resolve hardened. I called Carol. Get me a meeting with the FBI? If I was going to lose everything, I would lose it on my terms, not theirs. Agent Sarah Martinez listened with cool intensity as I laid out the whole story. From Victoria's fraud to Robert's suspected crimes. You realize, she said, that by coming forward voluntarily, you're admitting to benefiting from criminal proceeds? I nodded. Better to tell the truth than let my daughter use it as leverage. The agent leaned back, considering, Mrs. Sullivan, would you be willing to wear a wire? 3 hours later, I sat in my own living room with a small wire taped beneath my blouse, waiting for Victoria and Kevin to arrive. The house smelled faintly of polish and dust, familiar yet altered, like a stage reset for a different play. At exactly 8:00 p.m., the knock came, precise as a summons. They entered in their polished armor, Kevin with his briefcase, Victoria with her carefully arranged expression of filial concern. Mom, you look better, she said, as though complimenting a stranger. I smiled, because clarity really does change the skin. Kevin laid out papers with the brisk assurance of a man who believed every problem could be negotiated. Margaret, our lawyers have structured this favorably. You keep $5 million in clean assets, immunity from any charges. The rest goes to the government. Everyone wins. His tone was practiced, smooth, the kind he probably used on clients teetering between bad investments and worse. I asked about the $33 million Robert had actually left me. He called it tainted, beyond rescue. Victoria jumped in, her voice high. Mom, this is the best outcome. We all move forward, together. I leaned closer. And what do you two get out of this? Their eyes darted, their lips moved in tandem, but their answers were different enough to betray them. Kevin muttered about reputation. Victoria whispered about family healing. The performance was unraveling. So I asked when exactly Kevin discovered Robert's crimes. Was it before he married Victoria? Or only when they started plotting against me? His jaw tightened, his fingers hovering near the briefcase. Margaret, that isn't relevant. But it was relevant. Because either he had knowingly married into a family with dirty money, or he had stumbled into it while forging documents. Both paths led to guilt. I let the silence sharpen before I said the name that ended their performance. Agent Martinez. The air fractured. Kevin's skin went gray. Victoria's hands trembled. FBI, I added, watching the panic ripple. She's very interested in elder abuse, fraud, and extortion. Especially extortion. The door opened behind them and agents stepped inside, calm as surgeons. Kevin reached for his briefcase but was stopped. Victoria turned to me, her eyes wide, her voice cracking. Mom, how could you do this to your own family? The same way you forged documents to steal from me. I replied, except my way is legal. As the agents recited their rights, Kevin tried one last desperate tactic. Margaret, you don't understand. Robert was connected to people who won't appreciate this kind of attention. You're in danger now. Agent Martinez paused. Was that a threat? Mr. Hayes. He claimed it was a warning. She coolly informed him he had just earned an additional charge, witness intimidation. They were escorted out, their carefully tailored clothes no shield against handcuffs. After the door closed, Agent Martinez sat opposite me. Kevin's warning isn't entirely hollow, she admitted. Your husband was laundering money for the Torino crime family. My breath caught. So I was in danger. She shook her head. The Torino family has bigger problems now. Because here's what you didn't know. Robert wasn't just laundering. He was our informant. For 12 years he fed us information, all under deep cover. The money he kept was sanctioned. Part of maintaining credibility. Every cent he left you is legally yours. The room tilted again, but this time toward light. The man I thought had betrayed me had actually been working against criminals all along. His secrecy had been protection, not deception. My daughter and son-in-law, in their greed, had tried to weaponize half a truth. If they had known the whole story, they would have realized the inheritance was bulletproof. Instead, they had destroyed themselves trying to steal it. Months rolled forward like a tide carrying away debris. Victoria and Kevin were convicted of fraud, conspiracy, and attempted extortion. 18 months in federal prison each, reduced by plea deals, but still long enough to erase the gloss from their reputations. I reclaimed my house, renovated it in ways that finally reflected me. Not Robert's vision or Victoria's plans. The den became an art studio, filled with light and color. The kitchen gleamed with countertops I chose without compromise. The media latched on, of course. My phone rang with offers for interviews, documentaries, even dramatizations. At first I resisted, then reconsidered. If my story could help even one other senior recognize manipulation before it became destitution, wasn't that worth the spotlight? A foundation was born from that thought. The Margaret Sullivan Foundation for Elder Protection, seeded with $15 million of my inheritance. We funded legal aid, scholarships, and reforms. My name, once nearly erased from my own home, now stood for something larger. Victoria wrote me letters from prison, 17 in all. Some defensive, some desperate, some apologetic. I stopped opening them after the third. Words are cheap when paired with actions that cost people their dignity. Kevin's mother tried once more to negotiate, arriving at my door polished and unrepentant, but I didn't let her pass the threshold. Her wealth and her arrogance belonged to another world, one I no longer owed reverence to. 6 months after the arrests, I sat at my breakfast table with Dr. Sarah Chen, my new financial advisor and sister of the investigator, who had uncovered Robert's double life. We reviewed portfolios, discussed scholarships, and toasted to independence with morning coffee. Netflix had confirmed a documentary series. My art studio was filled with canvases of color and courage. And when Sarah asked if I had regrets the prison sentences, the estrangement, I answered with clarity. Family isn't DNA. Family is who protects you when you're vulnerable, not who exploits you. Later, I stood before a self-portrait on my easel, a woman in bright sunlight. Her face turned toward the future, her shoulders squared. She didn't look like the widow who had packed her life into 2 suitcases. She looked like someone who had learned the best revenge isn't getting even. It's becoming everything your enemies never believed you could be. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and tell me in the comments what this story made you feel. Your voice matters.